Thanks for tuning in today. I'm John Holmes with Holmes Hobbies, and I would like to talk about the new rig from Harley-Davidson. It's actually an e-bike. Are you aware of this? Let me know in the comments. So if you are regular to the channel, you do know that I like my e-bikes. It's one of those penchants that I have. I like wheels, I like motors, and I like motor wheels. Although honestly, I think the MidDrive situation may end up taking over in the long run. Let me know if you have any e-bikes, what sort of hub motors or MidDrives you're using on your particular bike and how you like them. Right now, I'm mostly hub motors. I do have, of course, the Sur, which is a MidDrive, and it's a little bit more than just a bicycle though. So maybe it's not the best comparison for this sort of video. But what I would like to talk about is the new e-bike that Harley-Davidson announced. Now, my first thoughts on this are that Harley-Davidson has never had good traction with electric vehicles. It's not their segment. Honestly, their segment right now is somebody that's probably a doctor or a lawyer with lots of money enough to throw down on a $40,000 motorcycle. They don't care about saving the environment, which is a whole nother discussion that maybe I'll get into in a few minutes here. They just don't care, but they want loud, they want noise, they want Harley-Davidson. They don't want an electric live wire bike, especially with the price premium that comes with the Harley-Davidson name when you can buy many other electric bikes on the market that seem to perform better, have better range, or better value. If you're just dipping your toe in the electric bike world, you probably don't want to start with the most expensive electric vehicle out there. So I'm wondering, how expensive is this e-bike going to be, essentially? Now, this is the big question. They gave us no details on this bike other than some fancy shots. I think the styling of the frame is pretty good. You can see it in the inset that, it's got the sleek black, multi-ladder frame. It's got the white tires. It kind of looks like a classic sort of early motorcycle. That's essentially what they were going after. And they started this new company called the Serial 1 Company, which is essentially paying homage to their first serial #1 motorcycle that they built, which was no more than a bicycle with a motor in a cradle in the bottom of the frame. And it completely changed, of course, the industry in the US as far as being able to get around. And at the time, it was a very affordable choice compared to an automobile or even keeping horses, I think. It was just one of those things that it got adopted quickly because it was just the right time, in the right market, in the right place, in the right parts. And they had already, learned a lot of things as far as the manufacturing with the Model T Ford, and that, everything just was kind of right place at the right time. So they styled this e-bike after their original Serial 1, kinda. It's got a leather seat, it's got the spring saddle. What do you think about the styling on this? Is it really classic looking, or is it more of the modern sleek trying to look like classic? Of course, with modern manufacturing technology, it's probably going to look more modern sleek, but it still, I think, does a really good job at grabbing your attention and having kind of sexy lines that a Harley-Davidson should be known for. However, I would say if you look at that bottom bracket that just hangs down, it really reminds me of some of the classic 70s style mopeds, to where it was almost like an afterthought. They just threw the motor right on there. The frame is incredibly sexy. I love the lines. And then they've got this motor that's just blocky and square and hanging off the frame. And in my opinion, okay, so it's not a production version, of course, but if they do something that looks like this for production, it ruins the aesthetics in my opinion. Maybe they could do some color fancies to kind of hide it, or some shrouds on the side or something like that. But what do you think on it? Is that hunk hanging down below, does that really bother you as much as it bothers me? And more than likely what they did is they have their MidDrive, which it's not announced who's making it. Maybe they're making it themselves. It's an electric motor with a gearbox. It's not too big of a deal, at least in my opinion. I make motors, so not too big of a deal. And then they probably threw an internally geared hub on the rear so that you can actually get a little bit of speed range on the bike. And it's a pretty good situation, as long as they don't put too much torque through it. And that's kind of the problem with a MidDrive, is that you have to balance performance with torque and then also not kill your rear hub. especially if you got gears. If there's no gears, no big deal. Freewheels are pretty stout. But when you have internally geared hubs, the little gears that transmit the power are very, very tiny. Or you get something like a roll-off and they're very big, but you also have this mammoth piece of weight on the back of your bike. It kind of upsets the balance of a bike, especially with the way that Harley-Davidson is doing the mid-drive. They have the batteries in the frame, they have the mid-drive in the middle, and it's going to be a very nicely balanced bike. So that's one thing that I always kind of wonder about. If I haven't ridden a bike, how well did they keep that weight balance? You know, if you go over a speed bump with really heavy rear hub, let me know if you've experienced this on your own e-bike. You know, your front tire gets over and then your rear hub hits that speed bump and just jacks it, you know, all 20 pounds of hub motor or whatever you got on the rear. And it is literally the least pleasant bike in the world to ride, in my opinion, is something with a really heavy hub motor on the rear, especially if you got your batteries on the rear too. There's still a lot of e-bikes in the world that are sold with batteries on a rear rack and a rear hub motor. If you're looking for an e-bike, I can say steer clear of those unless you're just looking for that low budget range, because that's usually what they are, $700 range or so. And speaking of price, I can assume that this Harley-Davidson is going to probably be $5,000, if not more, because the components that it has on it are going to put it probably about $2,500 range, maybe $3,000 range if it came in with the market, having no suspension, having no fancy fork, having essentially a non-name brand electronics on it. Maybe it'll be Harley-Davidson brand. Would you pay extra money for Harley-Davidson e-bike though? That's the big question, and I would like you to let me know. I think a lot of you guys are probably, you know, motorcycle enthusiasts, more so than me. I've only had a few in my life, never actually owned a Harley, and a lot of that is because if it's an older, less expensive one, it's kind of a pain to work on all the time. And if it's a newer one, it's kind of a pain to work on all the time. And I'm just not the type of guy that's gonna throw $30,000 plus on a motorcycle when I can have 3 vehicles that I daily drive for the same price or more. I mean, if I count them up, all my vehicles, 5 or 6 or however many I have right there, don't even add up to one new Harley-Davidson motorcycle. So that's really the big question. Are they gonna miss the mark with their market by pricing with a Harley-Davidson enthusiast, but let's be truthful, is a Harley-Davidson guy gonna buy an e-bike? He probably wants a motorcycle and not an e-bike. And if he gets an e-bike, he might not wanna spend 2 to 3 times more than what the market will give him in any other brand. So that's really what I'm wondering. Now, the styling, you know, they can probably improve that some before they go to production. Maybe it'll even be worse because a lot of times the fancy, you know, prototype frames, they make them to look great. They don't make them to be cheap. And when you're talking about producing thousands, tens of thousands of frames, you make them to be cheap. There's really no two ways around it. Although with a $10,000 price point, maybe they could have a little bit more expensive frame, but trust me, a corporation like Harley-Davidson will pinch every single penny that they can because it's the only way that they can make money. they have to price so high because they have a lot of overhead. So that's really my big question is, you know, how is this going to be accepted, especially by you? What do you think of this bike? Is this something that you would even consider, or would you just go for the low dollar, you know, maybe a USA brand, but made in China, just like this Harley-Davidson is probably going to be at a much more affordable rate? I want to know. So I'm probably not going to end up buying one. If I can rent one to review, I certainly will. Love to see how it performs. I mean, it's Harley-Davidson, so more than likely they're going to make it thrilling to ride. And if they don't, then I guess they're going to be going for the, you know, 65-year-old lawyer who just got knee surgery or hip replacement or something like that, and he wants to wear his Harley jacket while he rides his Harley e-bike, I guess. That's sounds fun to me. You know, it's do what you need to do to have fun. That's really the only thing that I can say about that. Not my idea of fun, but you never know. I mean, in 25 more years, I might be wearing a Harley jacket myself, so we'll have to eat my own hat, my Harley-Davidson hat, it shall be. Well, if you do have any more questions about it, you know, there's not a lot of information, so I really couldn't put a whole lot in there. They just basically said, here's this pretty bike. We're coming out with it. We have a new company called something one, Serial One. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think on this. Maybe there's some other questions, maybe something you could see on the me releases that I didn't pick up. So I thank you for tuning in today. Have a good day.